I got to see Mike Flanagan's The Life of Chuck at the Toronto International Film Festival, where it actually surprisingly won the People's Choice Award, which, if you don't know, is a pretty serious award when it comes to foreshadowing the Oscars later on in the year. A lot of films that usually win the People's Choice Award is at least a pretty big contender for Best Picture. Now, we won't know for about a year and a half if that's actually going to hold true for this movie, because Neon recently picked it up and announced that it's going to come out later on in the summer of 2025. And the movie has had its fair share of criticism, but I think a lot of it has come on after the movie actually won the award. But I do think that comes from a lot of critics kind of reviewing this film as a Best Picture contender, instead of actually reviewing it as the movie that it presents itself as. From the outside looking in, it didn't seem like The Life of Chuck was the kind of movie that would win the People's Choice Award, because it has been so tied to trying to figure out what is a Best Picture contender or what's going to be an Oscar player later on in the year. But at the end of the day, it's called the People's Choice Award. It's because people that are at the festival get to vote for what their favorite movie is. And whenever I would talk to somebody on the ground at TIFF and I would ask, what are some of your favorite movies that you're seeing? One of the films that was consistently loved by everybody was The Life of Chuck. If you didn't love the movie, you at least liked it. And if you liked it because it made you feel pretty good. Like, I think films like Anora and The Brutalist had a lot more acclaim coming out of the festival, especially from the critics' sphere of people. And I don't think that should take away from the fact that pretty much everybody that saw this movie actually enjoyed it. And look, I'm a Mike Flanagan fan. I think I'm more of a fan in terms of his television work rather than his movies, because Hill House still has one of the best jump scares I have ever seen, maybe the best jump scare of all time. Midnight Mass is super underrated. It's still my favorite thing he's ever worked on. If you haven't seen that show yet, it is a must watch. On the actual film side of things, I've never been his biggest fan. Like, Dr. Sleep really didn't work for me. I hear a lot of people swear it's incredible, so maybe in a few years I'll give it a rewatch. But in terms of The Life of Chuck, it really is one of those films that is a reminder of when we talk about movies online, because when you break down filmmaking, especially in the critic sphere of things, I feel like a lot of the times you could only break it down into two vague departments. You have the craft, which is pretty much how well made a movie is on every sort of technical level, whether it comes to cinematography and the visuals or the lighting or the audio, whatever it is. It's the technical aspects that make a film incredible. And then you have the storytelling, which is not only just knowing how to tell a story, but also, did that story make you feel something by the time the credits rolled? Both of these things are important. I think a lot of the objective best movies ever made are really good at nailing down both of these things. So I kind of agree with a lot of people judging this film harshly, because even when I was watching it, I kept thinking this isn't super impressive on a technical level. Even though Flanagan and Netflix had a pretty bad breakup, this still kind of feels like it was made for Netflix. But general audiences don't necessarily care about that type of thing as much as we do. And I think the reason The Life of Chuck won the People's Choice Award is because when you watch this movie, it's a hard movie to not like. It has the type of heart that is going to move anybody that's above the age of like 14. If you are 14 to 100 years old, The Life of Chuck will probably make you feel something. And I haven't really seen Mike Flanagan pull that off before. Like, I think one of the things that made his horror shows so unique is it did have some emotional elements there. But if you take some of those elements, what he does with The Life of Chuck is pretty much turns those into some sort of existential but still feel good kind of experience. And it does not deliver its message with any sort of subtlety, but I don't think that's necessarily a problem, because I'm so tired of every critic thinking that every movie needs so much subtlety that you have to find the message, because a lot of the movies that are considered the best of all time have zero subtlety to them at all. You look at a family movie like Back to the Future or Toy Story or The Lion King, you know what the message is, but we're not talking about how obvious the message is in any of those movies. They're just considered classics for a reason. It doesn't matter how obvious the themes are of the film. What matters is it made people feel something, they're memorable, and they stick around for a while. And I'm not saying The Life of Chuck is anywhere near any of the three movies I just mentioned, because when I watched the movie myself, I did have a roller coaster of opinions throughout it. The movie is split up into three distinct acts. The first takes up a decent amount of time, the second one takes up less time than the first act, and the third is by far the longest. I don't know exactly how long it is, but if I had to guess, it's probably longer than the first two combined. And my biggest problem with any sort of anthology kind of movie is that 9 times out of 10, the same complaint I always have is that one of those acts was so good that I wish just that was the rest of the movie. And The Life of Chuck definitely falls in that kind of category for me, because I think the first act of this film is actually incredible. There's just so much going on so early in the movie, and there's so many things you try to piece together, and that is definitely when Flanagan's horror background comes into play the most, I would say. But as the film progresses into the second and third act, it quickly becomes obvious what the movie is actually about. And although I do really love the overall message of the movie, and I think it is pretty warm by the end of it, I feel like the way we get to those certain points is just kind of clunky. And maybe I shouldn't say clunky, because even that I don't think is the right word. It just feels like one of those anthologies where multiple directors were behind it, and that Flanagan in the first act was the star of the show, and then the other two directors didn't nail it as much. Like, the third act here is going to be loved by a lot of people, and it's in a genre that I would consider one of my favorites, but I've just seen so many better versions of that kind of story in recent memory that it just doesn't fully work for me. But now that it's won the People's Choice Award, a lot of people are trying to figure out what Oscars it could possibly contend for, and there's been a lot of hype about Mark Hamill, apparently, which is so wild to me. I mean, when you're watching the movie, no, there's 0 point where you're like, wow, this guy deserves an Oscar for this. If anything, it kind of feels like the equivalent of giving an Oscar to Jamie Lee Curtis for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like, it's possible, because we live in a world where the Oscars are all about campaigning for the person that hasn't won an Oscar yet, and let's give it to them before they die instead of actually awarding the best performance of the year. But again, we'll actually see what happens when the Oscars roll around. In terms of negatives I have, it's hard to really dunk on The Life of Chuck for me. Like, I agree with a lot of critics out there. To me, this doesn't scream like the best movie of the year or one of the best films that deserves to be recognized at the Oscars necessarily, but not every movie needs to be that. I don't need every movie I see to be one of the best picture nominees later on in the year. A movie's merit in history should not come down to, is it worthy of an Academy Award? To me, that's just dumb, because it's just a bunch of old people voting anyway. But I think this is the type of movie that you could put it on for pretty much anybody in your life, and they're gonna feel good watching it. And to me, if that earns Mike Flanagan a Best Adapted Screenplay, because there are things in the third act that tie in a unique way to the first act that I really found interesting. So if he got nominated for that, and this was like the 10th Best Picture nominee for 2025, 2026, then hey, I just can't be too upset. If this feels like a shorter review than usual, it's because this is a segment of a much larger video that I've put on the channel already, kind of reviewing my entire experience of the Toronto International Film Festival this year. I saw about 37 movies, which is absolutely crazy, and I talk about all of them in that video. Some of these are the biggest Oscar players of the year, some of them are the best horror movies of the year, whatever it is, we talk about a lot of movies in that video. So a link to that full video will be in the description here, but if you just want to see the shorter reviews that keep coming out over the next week or two, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of those reviews that drop. This is also all of my social media right here, so if you want to follow me on Letterboxd, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is, I check the Letterboxd the most. I haven't been as active on this because I've been working on this video and so many other projects over the past month, but I love talking about movies on there, so if you want to keep up with what I'm watching, be sure to watch that. Also, shout out to Reed for being so patient with me and helping edit all these videos and getting all these exports out. So if you need help with any editing at all, be sure to hit him up. He will absolutely help your videos out a ton. Be sure to like these videos, whether it's this video, the Long Toronto video, they all help me out a ton. It helps more than you think. I know a lot of people ask for you to hit the like button, but it helps me pay Reed to help me keep editing these videos. So if you won't like it for me, like it for Reed. And be sure to comment down below. Have you seen this movie yet? If the film has come out, what did you think of it? If it hasn't come out yet, are you excited for it still? Did my opinion change? I mean, this outro is going on the end of all my videos. So with this specific movie, I don't know if I loved it or if I hated it, but you know what? At the end of the day, a day talking about movies is a good day. So I'd love to talk to you in the comment section down below, and that is it for me. So this is Chase. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I hope you have an awesome day. Thanks.